Welcome to the Fear Itself podcast. Back with Anthony and Oliver here.
Yeah.
Returning again, co-host. Nice to see you again.
Nice to be here.
And we're covering. We are. That's such a great sound. Well, and in keeping with the theme of the video, which is The Grudge from 2004, with Sarah Michelle Gellar. And boy, does this movie look like it's in the 2000s.
It does, doesn't it? And I was going to say as well, the late Bill Pullman, who played the man from the beginning there. Yeah. The guy who's the driving force as to what's going on there.
Peter.
Peter has his character's name. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a few actors in here that are notable because there's also, as you mentioned, the Lost connection. Ian.
Is Ian in this? That's right. No, not Ian.
Ian?
No, it's I was even talking about it yesterday. No, is it Nathan?
Nathan. No,
Nathan
something
either.
like that.
Anyway,
it'll come.
It'll come back to us. Yes.
But there's at least there's a star-studded cast.
Ethan.
Okay, we were close. Ian, Nathan. We just had to put them together.
That's right. But Ethan is in it. That's right.
Yeah. But this movie really looks and feels like it's from its era. And I did watch this 2 years ago, and I stand by certain sequences from this movie being very, very good. Yes. I think that it has a few scary instances in it, and then a lot of crap kind of surrounding.
Interesting. Okay, so because this is the first time I saw it as well.
Yeah,
and we did this recently, and I would say that this movie, rightfully so, deserves the fear that it was getting back in 2004 when it came out. Right, it is scary. Mm-hmm. I think the because it comes from an original, right? It's not original, right?
Yeah, this is from
it's a remake of sorts.
Everybody's pretty familiar with Ju-on, the original. I think it's 2002, the Japanese film as well. And we're going to get into that and watch that as well.
Yeah.
I've seen that one before.
Yeah. Well, it's because the three Japanese characters who are part of the Grudge house, we'll say, the child as well, I believe.
Kayako, Toshio, they're part of the Saeki family.
Yes, and they're all the same actors, if I'm not mistaken, from the Ju-on.
film.
So
I actually don't know about that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I read into it afterwards to say that they've reprised their roles. There's a few of the Japanese actors from the original film.
Oh, super cool.
That actually reprised the roles for this say. But in any case, I'm sorry, I'm missing her name. The Japanese, Kayako. She is freaky.
Oh yeah, yes,
she's freaky.
So she haunted my dreams when I was 13 or 14 because I think this movie was definitely the scariest movie to me
for a long time.
For a very long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know what replaced it at one point. I think the Babadook had its moments too.
Oh sure, that
one had some scary moments in it too. But I mean, this one hung on to everybody has that one movie that hung on to your youth. But Child's Play got me really good when I was a kid.
Sure, I would say that as well. Mm-hmm. No, I think that the opening of this movie, right, with Kayako, and then I think is it Yoko, who's the runner-up for the
she's the caregiver,
right? The caregiver, and then what happens to her and everything, and that's that's such a great scene as she's getting pulled up, it's so creepy.
It is it's a great cold open.
Yes, it's really that it goes directed by the original director of.
I guess it wouldn't be a cold open. The cold open is technically Peter.
Right. Yes. Because this is the introductory, the what are those called? The opening credits type of thing.
Right. Because
a lot of films don't do that anymore.
This film's not shot in chronological order either. There's sort of there's a lot of ebbs and flows, and you're in this time period, then you're in another time period.
Yes.
And we kind of start with Peter's death, and we don't actually get to learn that much about him till way later in the film.
That's right.
And his significance.
What is going? Because he's there with his wife, I believe, right?
Yeah,
and she's there, and
I have to laugh at this because you wouldn't notice it because I think they subtly phased it out, but just people waking up with perfectly done hair and a full face of makeup is hilarious. They're just I
did notice that,
and you're just holy shit, you look good when you wake up. It's I look I got them pillow marks in my face. I got no hair, so it's I ain't looking good.
Dark
when you wake
circles,
up.
And you're
another fucking day.
My voice is just never that clear.
Yeah, she wakes up, honey, and you're no, that's not what we sound
and
like.
He's looking to jump off the balcony.
Yeah,
and he
that
looks
guy's got the right idea. That's how I feel in the morning. You jump off the fucking balcony.
So, Jesus,
no, dude, that guy breaks himself on the ground, dude.
Yeah.
And if you don't, I remember watching this and being kind of shocked the first time I watched it when I was younger.
It kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
almost, right? Yeah, because he looks scared.
Yeah.
He looks scared. He looks sad. He looks worried of some sort.
He looks desperate.
And then as soon as and she's like clearly knows nothing because she like as you just said, like, hi honey, like good morning, all this stuff. She smiles at him and he looks at her and he's just like, and then turns and woo.
That guy like slithers over the balcony.
And there's like that look on her face, right? She doesn't quite understand what just happened.
Yeah.
It's not a scream. It's just like silence. And then she goes, and then it's the like, oh my God kind of situation, right?
You know what's wild too is that I didn't realize this either, was Sam Raimi was involved in this as well.
Yeah, he's the producer and he shows up in the movie. I saw him every time. I'm like, oh, it's this guy.
Yeah, because Sam Raimi's in it, and it's there's some shots of it that are sort of reminiscent too of because is this before or after Spider-Man? Because when was the first Spider-Man? Was that 2001?
So the first Spider-Man came out, I believe, in 2002.
Okay, so this is post Spider-Man.
This is post Spider-Man, but it's actually at the same time as the second Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 came out in 2004 as well.
Yeah.
So this was because this is not Sam Raimi's directing.
Right.
This is Sam Raimi producing, right?
Right.
But he's funny enough because he also cameos in the Spider-Man movies as well. He works in like the Daily Bugle. Yeah. So as soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh, this guy. So that's why I was...
Because he's the caregiver's like boss.
That's right.
Essentially.
Yeah. So he's a very minor role.
Yes.
But he shows up like a decent amount of time. I think he does die like horrifically too, doesn't he?
Yeah, because Yoko gets him.
Yeah, that's right. Yoko returns.
Yes.
So yeah, no, it's interesting to see him. And then so let me ask you this, because you, as somebody who has seen both the original and this one, right? Yeah. And you've watched them like relatively recently, but also in the past. Right?
And also like kind of some of the newer ones. They had like the, I think it was on Netflix and whatever, but
they've had like, and
they had a lot of iterations.
I've also heard there's a side story one as well that just came out called The Grudge, and it came out like 2020.
That's the one I watched.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we can talk about that one sometime in the future as well.
Absolutely.
So having seen all these movies, because when I was watching it, I was talking with my wife Fiona, and we were talking like, isn't it strange that there's so many like white people in Japan? Like, why is this story focused so much on them? But of course, it's a remake for the American audiences. Yeah. Right? So when you're watching this, do you think it's kind of weird to see like so many? Because you work.
I'm glad you bring this up. Yeah. I'm glad you bring this up because like this is definitely like an intrusive part of the story in this one.
Okay, so you notice this as well.
Absolutely, because I want to give The Ring a lot of credit because you can't talk about The Grudge without talking about The Ring.
Yes.
Dark Water, all of these Japanese influenced stories that were pulled in, and like this is J-horror. This is J-horror time in a horror,
right?
Because this is the time where you have torture porn and J-horror.
That's right.
Those are the two dominant forces that are happening right now.
A lot of these remakes of these Asian classic kind of horror films are coming out. Right?
So I'm reading the Ring right now, the original book, and what I love and I respect about The Ring, the American remake of it, is it's really faithful to the book. Because there was an original short series, like a TV series about The Ring, that preceded even the Japanese Ring movie as a horror movie.
Gotcha.
Because it's gone through some adaptations over the years. So I'm reading the novel right now. I'm right at the end. It's a good novel, and check it out too if you want to. He won a lot of awards for that writing because of his huge influence as well. But what is interesting about this one is you bring these American actors over into Japan, and it kind of, I don't know if it dilutes it, but it just takes you out of it a little bit, and it does feel very strange to be there.
Just for such a homogenous society such as Japan, right? But I think what kind of started getting me, because I can understand that whole thing, because they do talk, and they're speaking English because they're from America, and like the boyfriend and Sarah Michelle Gellar's characters, like these characters are all there. Is it Doug? Yeah, Doug and what was her character's name?
Her name's Karen.
Karen.
Yeah.
So Doug and Karen, like they both have really good in-story reasons for being there. Like they're exchange students.
Yeah.
She's working as a caregiver, like as a part of her credits for her school. He's doing some other things. They're living the lifestyle of Japanese people.
Yeah.
In like the little apartment. Like I like this.
Yeah.
But then like everybody they come into contact with, barring the police, like even the people they're giving cares for, are white. Yeah. It's like some things like why you guys?
Well, and that's why I want to bring up The Ring, because they do it in America, and like they're faithful to the source material in that it's sort of this investigative sort of role.
You're right.
And it's not intrusive because I'm getting a call. It's not intrusive because it's set in America, but they're sort of fulfilling the same story. But in this one, it's like they have to adapt so much of it to being in Japan, because it's this specific house.
It has to be.
It has to be here.
Yeah.
Because it only it only kind of makes sense. I guess you could adapt it so that you had those characters, but I think the visual changes a lot. Like if you do Kayako as like an American person who's died after being murdered or something like that.
Right.
It doesn't really resonate.
I don't think it transfers well.
I don't think it transfers that well, especially visually.
Right.
Because Kayako is terrifying visually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it also has that the Japanese detective even states like so much like in Japan they have a belief that when people get die horribly in their home, it becomes like a vengeful kind of spirit that lives there, right? So it's kind of like it's also playing off of that Japanese location aspect to it, so it has to be there.
Yeah, whereas maybe like, this is where the lore happens. This is where these kind of curses happen.
Right, you wouldn't have that.
You need that
American aspect, right? So it's like it can only happen in Japan. Is that what it is? It's like, but no, probably not. It's like the belief. Does the belief bring it out to be that kind of instance? Is that why this exists?
It almost feels like that way with a lot of like curse lore.
It absolutely does. You have to believe it.
Yeah, you have to believe it.
Right,
but you also have to you have to be in a certain location for that to be happening. Yes. Where there's like that culture. But anyways, it is super interesting. There's two things I want to bring up with this because I think they're both super important. Yes. With Japanese horror, one of the themes that comes up all the time is sort of this despair and inevitability.
Okay.
Where there's like no escaping it.
That's right.
And with The Ring, there is a way to escape it, which is to make a copy of the tape. But with this, the whole lore of the Grudge is sort of this inescapable curse.
That's right.
And
they can follow you.
What do you think of what do you think of these movies that are a little bit more fatalistic like that? Or I would say that a lot of J-horror is pretty nihilistic. It really has that darker tones that things aren't getting better.
I think isn't that kind of the point of that type of horror, right? So if you're in that kind of perspective, I think it's also kind of because in Japanese culture, perhaps it is one of those things that people can just they would give up after so much, right? But then like for an American, I think their mindset is very different to what a Japanese person would probably do, right? So they want to investigate this kind of curse, they want to try and get rid of it. But what do I think of the actual fatalistic aspect to it?
Because there's a lot of American horror that's fatalistic too. You have like The Witch, you have things that are just like what do you think of like that nihilistic sense to horror? Because I think a lot of people kind of prefer in a weird way they prefer
because there's no happy ending.
There's no happy ending.
You know what? I feel like that's kind of one of the acting tropes of a horror story, right? Is that there is no happy ending. It's left either ambiguous and mysterious, or it just like continues on, which we kind of see.
But there is catharsis in things like the Babadook,
right?
Where there's sort of a resolution at the end. There's still darkness in it,
right? But it could definitely happen again, right? They didn't get rid of the spirit. It's just that Babadook per se was taken care of in that kind of instance, right?
Fair enough.
But like if you have like another house that has another grudge,
right,
so to speak, then that could be the thing. But this thing clearly never leaves. However, if you do wish to beat it, one thing I did find out was it has to be kind of invited in, similar kind of like to a vampire actually in some ways. It's like if it comes and pretends to be someone you care about, and you invite it into your life. That is kind of how it is. So when you're part of like the house, when you go into the house, it's like you're invited into this. Or when it goes and escapes, I think it was, we mentioned Ethan, and I think the guy's last name is Manthorpe or something, the actor's last name. So he and his sister are taking care of their mother. Their mother is, again, I don't know why they moved to Japan specifically for this, but in any case, they moved their mother, and then she's working elsewhere. She finds something is going on that's very strange, and this entity is chasing her. But it's not until it pretends to be him, and she invites him into her home, that thing comes in, right?
Well, no, that's not... This part's weird in the movie, too.
Okay.
And I got my wires crossed a little on it, too. Because there's Matt, that's Ethan.
Yeah.
Or Manthorpe,
right.
Whatever.
Oh, yeah, Matt is the brother, right? Yeah, right.
And then there's Jennifer, who's his wife.
Yes, and then his sister is the other one, the blonde one.
Yes.
So
she's the one who invites him in.
She invites him in because it has to be let into. But he and his wife obviously were the ones taking care of the mother,
right?
And Yoko, I guess, at some point. But then all of them were in the house already, so they were getting taken care of by the creature or the entity. And then the sister, who was just like living away, and then of course.
I think she was in the house at one point, though. I think the point is
she was. They all.
I think they all. I think
that's when she got lodged in.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think you have to cross the threshold of the house to get done by this.
Yes, exactly.
And And let's talk a little bit about just the linear plot of this, because it is a little bit confusing because it's shot out of sequence.
Yeah.
Because first you have caregivers in the house, and they're caring specifically for Emma, who is the old woman, I think, with dementia.
Yes.
Emma has children who are Matt and blonde person.
Yes.
I can't remember
her name.
And then you have, and he's married.
Matt's wife is also living there.
Yes, and that's Jennifer.
Jennifer.
These are the.
So
they did like a
them,
wheel of names here and picked like what are the whitest names we can have.
Yeah.
We got like Doug, Karen, like Emma, Matt, Jennifer. Like fuck.
Super. Like they're all living in Japan just for the sake of this. But and that's another thing I kind of brings me into this is like, so did Matt and his sister, because they're both working in Japan at this point, because Jennifer is staying at home kind of taking care of the mother, did they get the jobs to like come to Japan first separately, or did they want to move their mother because this is like the nice area for her to be taken care of, and they got jobs there? Is that what happened?
I don't know.
Because
it's a weird.
Yeah, because Jennifer doesn't have work.
No, everybody's just kind of there.
Right.
Yeah.
They're kind of there for no really specified reason other than this house is so nice.
It's an unmemorable reason that they are in Japan. At least like with like Karen or Sarah Michelle Gellar. I'm just going to call her Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Sure.
Because
Everybody knows who that is. Yeah.
Because Karen, I can't get it with these basic ass names. Oh man, her boyfriend though.
Doug,
holy shit.
I can't even remember I can't believe you remember his name, man. Like he's so.
What I love and find so funny about this movie is the first time I watched it, I was like, why the fuck is Doug in this movie at all? Doug. He is nothing Doug.
That's what I mean.
It's like that is his name to me because, but he serves a crucial, important plot point. Can you guess what it is? I bet you can't.
Probably
because,
not.
Like,
let's see.
Because all Doug does in this movie is he's kind of there and he's not a very supportive boyfriend for the whole movie, but he smokes. Doug smokes.
Oh, right.
And in the very end, he gets his lighter used. That was the purpose of Doug. That was his entire purpose within the plot of this movie.
And it couldn't have just been that Karen smokes.
Karen could have just smoked.
Yeah,
no, it had to be Doug and his like skater cut.
Like it's so 2000s, right? And it's like a guy like that, I feel like maybe he would have ever gone to Japan, but it didn't seem like he was. And he was also working. He worked at a restaurant. I was like, how do you have a job?
But it was like an Italian restaurant too. It was like, what? It would have been super funny if they would have made him like a professional sushi chef, and everybody was just okay with it. It's like no one would be okay with you, Doug.
Nobody would be okay with you. Like I assume even
he's wearing like a maitre d' like
he's clearly like a bartender or like a busboy. Like it's a very minor position, and it's like a little street cafe you might find just in Tokyo.
Yeah,
but maybe. It's so right. But it's so funny to be like, okay, and his boss is there, and he's like, "Oh, do you mind if I go home early?" And his boss is like, "Yeah, no problem." I'm like, that would never happen. Like, the Japanese are like renowned for like being hard workers, and they stay late. Like, there's no way. But we're getting a little too much into this. I think the Grudge itself has its own good story, but it's surrounded by a lot of these contrivances that are just so weird. So weird when you think about it, and if you've ever been abroad.
Yeah, and I wish they would have just picked better names.
Right.
Because like they picked like the simplest names because like Toshio and like Kayako, like I mean like at least you can remember those names because like they're more memorable to me than any of the American names because the American names were just picked out of a hat.
I mean, I didn't remember their names as clearly just because I guess I've seen them as much. But Toshio, sure, like these names do ring a bell, and I know who you're talking about as soon as you say it.
Yeah, exactly.
But even then, but in any case, if we go back to the story then, because we can nitpick all day about like certain aspects to it, but then when we have like the actual story, so with everything happened, these characters exist in the world that it's in.
Absolutely.
So Sarah Michelle Gellar's Karen has taken over for Yoko because Yoko has disappeared, as we've alluded to. She was taken,
sucked into the attic.
That was creepy as hell, and probably one of the best creepy parts I would say of the movie. Right at the beginning.
Very
really
much
good.
So. It's a good sequence.
Yeah, and over the course of the little sprinkled things in and certain like pictures of Bill Pullman's Paul. Yeah, you're right. Also you're right. Very, very basic names. So Paul's like sprinkled in throughout this whole movie. And we're like kind of alluded to like, well, what's going on with Paul then? What does Paul have to do with this house?
Peter.
Oh, is it Peter? Sorry. Is it Paul or Peter?
Like the guy who jumps off the ledge?
Yeah,
that's Peter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Peter. Another P name.
I mean, easy to get them mixed up.
My God, is there a Peter in this movie? I don't think there is. But in any case, this Peter sprinkled all throughout this movie, and so seeing him, like, how does he work into it? How does he work into the story? And we kind of get bits and pieces over it because, as you mentioned, the story isn't told in a linear fashion, right? We get these flashbacks. I did find it. Fiona and I, when we were talking about the movie, she found like, oh, like, when is this taking place?
Yeah.
And the only way you can really tell, because it doesn't change the filter of the screen, it doesn't say like 10 days or 3 years earlier. It doesn't say anything like this. It just kind of cuts to it as if it's another scene in the movie. Mm-hmm. But then it's because of the people you know who already live or are still living or who are no longer living, right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah.
I thought that was a fun way to tell a story.
That. It was okay.
No, I think it's actually, what I really like about it is that you have to pay attention.
Yeah.
It's a movie that actually rewards you for paying attention to things, which I highly appreciate it. Because nowadays, like, we can go skyrocketing into like an establishing shot of London. It's clearly London, but they'll still put London, England as like a caption. Like, yeah, we know this, but it's still nice just to have people like, oh, okay, so this person's still alive, and you pay attention to it.
Yeah.
I would say... What would you say is like the scariest aspect of it then? Because you said this haunted your dreams for a long period of time.
Yeah, well, I think the sound design was really good in this because when we get the initial kind of scares that you get, or you have the old woman Emma who's in the house, the mother, and she's clearly petrified of a few things and undergoing either, I think, some dementia-like symptoms.
Sure. And
so she's being cared for, but I think that the sounds in it, or the sounds that people tend to make with their throat when it's like super memorable. It's that gravelly throaty voice.
So I had to do a little bit of research on this because I thought she had died. Do you know why that noise is made during that time?
Yeah, because I think in the context of this movie,
the story,
in the context of this movie, the husband like snaps her neck like freaking John Cena.
Basically, just does like he breaks her neck. Yeah, but she's not dead. So she's able to make this like gargling sound,
and that's what Toshio's saying.
But she's paralyzed, and that's
So it's kind of that throaty. You've destroyed the larynx, then
right. Yeah, and it's such an unfortunate way to die too, because she basically like dies of dehydration and starvation because she's paralyzed, and he stuffs her into the attic.
Oh, okay.
Like,
man, I didn't even get that.
She's not dead at the time that he's dragging her along there.
What really does end up making it effective is that sound design with the throat voice, because I think it's doubly, triply as frightening because you get that gravelly tone, and they sort of accentuate it too, and they make it a lot more sort of powerful.
Yeah.
So like that's the part that kind of gets into your head, because even if you close your eyes in a horror movie, if you have effective sound design, it gets you. Yeah, that's right. So I think I appreciate that, at least, that they took that extra time to think of a scary noise that's pretty iconic, I think, in horror.
Yeah. You wouldn't
with that.
You wouldn't unhear it from anything, right? So
yeah,
and then also like during the flashback of how this happened, like with the husband finding out about Kayako's, or what was it? Sorry, Kayako. I'm sorry, Kayako's feelings towards Peter.
Yes.
And like all this kind of stuff, and hence why he's in the story.
Yeah. Because it's basically like the killing is done out of anger because he finds out his wife's obsession with
He's convinced she's having an affair, and this is another thing I think, and I think you can agree why it probably wouldn't happen in an American setting the same way, is because pride and obsession with Japanese culture, like when it comes to face value as well, right? Like your pride and your honor is a very big thing when it comes to this. So if you have like the husband, which we don't really know much about in this film, and he suffers this like feels like a betrayal, and he's convinced that she's like having an affair on him or something, like this embarrasses him and embarrasses like his life and his whole mindset, right? Dishonors him, loses his pride, all this kind of stuff. I think that creates a much larger grudge and a sense of resentment than maybe you would have in the United States. Maybe for that, I don't know. Would you?
Yeah, I mean, like I think that there's like you would definitely have that overlap between American Japanese culture, where if you find your partner cheating on somebody, there's been a lot of murders based on that premise.
Massive amounts of hate and
but
anger,
I can see,
for sure.
I do see what you mean about that
it's like
losing face, because I don't necessarily think that there was an affair happening explicitly. There was this obsession.
I think she's just obsessed. Yeah, because she even says in her diary, like,
yeah,
he doesn't even know I exist.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Which is the kind of the crazy part too.
Right. It's like what makes her suddenly like him?
Yeah, because she writes this journal.
Yeah.
Which is found by Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yes.
And like
the journal exposition.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was a classic.
Yeah. It's like okay, yeah. This works as a plot device.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that intensity of the killing seems to matter a lot with what the curse is.
Yes.
Where he kills her in a state of anger, revenge, and also there's kind of her odd connection to Peter outside of it and her obsession.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of this breaking down of that family. Yeah. And then also sort of the tragedy of Toshio as well.
Yeah,
where
Toshio
he ends up getting killed in the process as well, and the cat.
So like so I remember that, and then like Toshio's drowned.
Yes.
And the cat is like broken in half or whatever. That was horrible.
Yeah.
And then Kyoko is taken up and like stuffed into the attic, and then she dies of whatever it is, and she can't do it. Like it's so horrible. And then he hangs himself, doesn't he? Isn't that how? Or maybe the grudge takes effect, and then she kills him.
Yeah,
something
unclear,
sort, right? Yeah.
But I think that it's also interesting that these ghosts seem to have sort of a lot of physical power too. Yeah. Because she almost still has a physical form, a physical body throughout it as well. So there's this spiritual element. There's also sort of a physical residual sort of corpse element to it as well.
That's right.
And so it was interesting because Matt and Jennifer get taken up into the attic as well. She's found petrified at one point on the bed after having dealt with Kayako.
Yeah.
And so it's almost the terror element of this being is sort of what puts people in their place, but then she still goes ahead and will physically murder you as well. So she has kind of those two sides as well. Because there's moments when she's manifesting herself in different parts of the room, behind them in that bundle of hair. And that and that whole, I love this about the Japanese like imagery that they use within The Ring and The Grudge, the hair that obscures the face. And sort of and because
and it's like jet black, and it has that kind of
contrasted with the white,
comes right out of the shadows.
Exactly.
No,
and so you typically just see the face and then some hair as well. So it's and her expression, the actress, just
those eyes,
and like just like
pierce into your soul.
Her expression and like the open mouth with just a black void. It's such a good design, and I really want to give so much credit to this because, with all of the funny stuff that's kind of happening in this movie, there's almost like two movies that are kind of happening here. You have like this genuinely like absolutely terrifying sequences within this movie, and then it's also interacting weirdly with like people from the 2000s.
It feels like it could be like
odd.
It feels like it's like a tourist trap type of movie, like a comedy where these like students are trying to like, let's live like Japanese people, and they're doing like a horrible job.
Yeah.
As you just said, with like all these horrible,
all of that stuff is just like going so hard though. So like, there's some scary sequences. I think one of the scariest is the sister when she's in her office building. Yeah. And then she sees Kayako coming up the stairs for the first bit.
Oh,
when we're starting to actually use what I think is the most effective part is the stop motion. The stop motion is everything.
Is that what that was?
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Because
when it looks so unconventional. Right?
Yeah, it's so disjointed when she's moving, and it's effective. I love the way it's shot. I don't know what frame rate they chose to shoot this in, but it's incredible. And so they did that, and there's that great sequence where she goes to her apartment, and then she gets the call from Matt, but then it's just...
And then a buzz, like as soon as it's like, oh, I'll let you in, hits the button, and then as soon as that happens, the doorbell rings.
That's a good one.
And she's like, that can't be right. That was way too quick. She lives on like the 11th floor.
Exactly.
And she's like, no way. And then looks and, oh, there he is. And she's like, oh, okay. I mean, must be him.
Yeah.
Like anybody would think that, right? So, yeah.
I wouldn't open that fucking door. It's like, Anthony, like, what would you do if I just like teleported my way up here? You're on the 11th floor too, bro.
Okay, where credit is due, like, I'll give the benefit of the doubt, is that what I would have probably had gone through my head. Mind you, I'm freaking out a little bit, right? So you and I are living in Japan. You're visiting me. And I just got home after some really creepy-ass thing just happened to me at my work. And you're calling like, yeah, I'm here to stop by. I just want to talk to you about something. And I'm like, okay, cool. and then I'll let you up, and then, or like, what floor do you live on? I'm like, okay, this, and I'll let you up, and then ding, and the ding dong. I'm like, oh, that's strange. What would have gone through my head was you called me during a time when you were already on the floor, and you just needed to know what room I was in. God, you're annoying.
Gotta get them kibbles.
There you go, honey. I mean, people are gonna think you're a ghost. It's like, oh, there's that ghost again. There she is. Okay, she's happy. So yeah, that's what I would have thought for that. So I would assume that's what was going in through her head. She's like, oh, he must have just called me when he was in the building already, and then I just hit the button for the sake of it because I thought that's where he was.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you just saw a body coming up some stairs, and then she like steals her little rabbit's foot too off of her bag.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Like it was a physical thing.
Yeah,
a physical thing. And then she even sees on the security cam, which we later see
thing
with the
just
detective.
coming right out of the darkness.
Yeah, like it's.
I'm not fucking answering my door.
I would be a little bit more hesitant to be like, hey, how are you? Like, whatever. I see you up there. I'm like, I don't know though. I don't know if I would. I probably would.
Okay, I can't get over the way that she runs either, because she runs like.
Is she in high heels?
Yeah, I think, or like something that's like impeding the ability to run. But it's like sometimes when somebody's running in shoes like that, it just becomes funny, and it was just like you're just like flustered and running, and you're just like, yeah. But anyways, she got a great like running shuffle. But the violation here, the ultimate violation that happens in this is when she pulls up the covers in her bed, and then frickin' Kayak goes right in there with her. Boom. And then you're not even safe under the covers.
No. And that was like
sucked into nothing.
And that's exactly it. Her body's never found.
No.
She disappears into a void.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's another aspect to this. I thought that their bodies would come back. Because even Yoko came back.
I think she probably had to go somewhere. She's probably in her own closet, let's be real.
But, and again, you can correct me on this. Don't the Japanese also have like multiple deities of death as well?
Like, well, I mean, like the overarching ones that come up always are like the Shinigami.
Right. But, so, I mean, as a Grudge is like performing like death, essentially, right? Killing all these people. Like, maybe her body went to another place?
I think there's a specific term for this type of like Japanese spirit.
Okay.
Because it is obviously these things predate the Ring, the Grudge, and all of that. Those visuals are something that's been around for a long time. Because I think people used to be buried in white kimonos, and I think that sort of the spirits, the vengeful spirits that people would imagine, would come back with their face obscured by their hair in white. In what they were buried in, and so there's a specific term for it. I'll post it on this video as well.
Sure.
But yeah, it's like there's some lore with this visual that predates these movies.
Sure.
For sure. And you can see it in artwork too. It's pretty cool.
Well, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, and I think from this point on, this movie is just relentless, like in terms of like the scares and stuff. So I got to ask you.
Yes.
Like I told you this was scary. Did you actually find it scary?
Now I am glad you brought this up because I even talked to my wife about this because I was thinking to myself, had I been in your shoes 20 years ago when this came out, right, and we were much younger then, absolutely I would have been the same thing as you. I would have shit in the bed. I would have been terrified of this movie.
For the record, I've not shit the bed.
I probably would have. Like it was. I could definitely see because when I was a kid, I wasn't a big horror fan.
Yeah.
So having like those films, I purposely removed myself out of any of those aspects because I didn't want the even notion of having it in my nightmares because those things will never leave me, and I'm already like kind of in that mindset when there's like the dark, right? Like I was always afraid of the dark when I was a kid. So I purposely never put myself into that position. But being an adult, watching this now, and I have someone to watch it with, I can honestly say I'm not as afraid as I once was.
Yeah.
So as I'm watching this movie, and aside from that Yoko one, because that really does creep me out to see like she sees, and then you just see her body and her screams as she's getting pulled up.
Yeah.
That to me is actually the creepiest part of this film, other than Jennifer, the sister.
Yeah.
Having her appear in the bed and then she again gets pulled in and disappears.
Yeah.
I think that is like probably the creepiest parts of this for me.
Okay.
Her crawling down the stairs.
Yep.
Is a very good effect.
Yes.
Doesn't scare me as much.
Okay.
the little boy, right? Like even when she's going up the elevator and
Yeah,
you
he's
see
like
the boy,
sneaking
he's
in
like
the
going
background.
closer. I'm like, that's good, but she never sees it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like she doesn't get any like she's unaware.
That one's
right?
nice because it's subtle.
It is
there's no sound cue.
No, it's just like
just getting closer.
and he's just getting closer and closer, and she's just like. But she never notices. If there had been one more scene, she looked and then it like just passed her by. And she's like, and then the next one and he's gone. Yeah. I think that would have been a little bit more personable to the fear.
Yeah.
But in any case,
I still like the subtlety of that.
Of course, no, it was very well shot. Like, for us, the audience, it's freaky. But for her, it doesn't really add anything to her fear already. She's already freaking out, right? And then even having like that flashback scene, and honestly, it doesn't really scare me. It just makes me feel kind of bad because of like with the wife, with the cat, with the boy, and then like having that grainy little flashback edited shot there. I thought that was good to see, but it did kind of like
sad.
It was sad. So that's what I would say about this film. So does it scare me? Absolutely. But would it keep me up anymore if I was by myself? Absolutely. If I wasn't, probably not as much. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. I thought, like, I know it's a bit goofy because there's some goofy parts in this movie. And so it doesn't really hold up as a whole.
Sure.
But I think there's some really, because of those great moments and those really great parts, I still think it's a really effectively scary movie.
Right.
Like, overall, I don't rate it very highly in terms of what it is as a whole, but I have to say that in terms of just being a scary, effective thing, I think that it would be fun to learn from those sequences to apply them to modern film, because I think there are some really, really crucial aspects of that don't show up as much in modern horror.
Yes.
That the tension building, the creepiness of the actual monster itself, or Kayako, and how she's visually depicted. I think that those things are really great, and it's like you really want to see a great version of The Grudge or Ju-on done, and I feel like it's yet to be done.
Fair enough.
And so I don't, and I'm not trying to like knock the original at all either. It's just that I would love to see this done in a way that really gets a big budget and also still has what this one does, which is effective practical effects.
Right.
And really great
and that subtle fear
that
kind
just
of like
just
builds
good,
up over time.
just good storyboarding. Yeah. They had, I think, a good director of photography for this one or whatever, but they planned this one out, and they for whatever reason, I find it much more effective than a lot of horror movies.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree. And I think as like one of those classic early 2000s horror films that were kind of adapting from the Japanese ones. Yeah. I'd say this one, there was a reason it held up so well way back then. Like I remember a lot of people always talking about how scary this movie was. Yeah. So I can completely see where it comes from. Yeah. Nowadays, and again, like being an adult for it, I could definitely see where I would choose to maybe make it a bit different. Yeah. And I don't necessarily know if it needs a better budget, because graphics and...
I mean, it had a really good... This one had like $187 million
Oh, there you budget. Go. That's super high for a...
Or maybe it was. That might have been what it produced. I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
I saw that number somewhere.
It could have had like a decent budget, but for a horror film... Yeah. Those are very, very rare.
These ones got a huge budget. There was a string of these that got really good budgets. I don't know what Skeleton Key got, but I know that The Ring had a really good budget. I know that this had a good budget. Right. And I think that... What was the other one that we watched? Oh, no, we didn't watch this one. Fear.com. Was another one that was kind of within this realm. Though Fear.com is a whole different ballgame.
Right.
That one's...
Maybe one day we can do that one too. But
that one is objectively bad. Right. And it's like no other movie I've ever seen either. It's like they just decided to invent a way to film. And they just went for it. It's a beautiful piece of shit.
It's a polished turd. Yes. No, that's fair. When it comes to The Grudge, I think it's just it has a lot going for it.
Right.
And it can definitely... I mean, like a lot of really good movies, there's always something that can be improved, because no movie will ever be perfect, or there's very, 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 very few movies that are ever perfect. Mm-hmm. But this one... Great horror idea. Yeah. Great execution. Yeah. But there are just some things that kind of make you go,
I think this is one of the very few instances where the 2000s-ness of it is distracting. Because I would say that with Naomi Watts in The Ring, you don't really notice you don't really notice the era of the film as much. Okay. And I would say with Skeleton Key, you didn't notice it as much either.
Right, when you're kind of secluded and you're in an older environment.
And you couldn't really tell by what people were wearing and dressed as. It didn't age or date the film as much.
Sure.
This one ages and dates itself badly, I would say.
Well, with the technology and like how they speak and
just they stand out so much in Japan too, and just the hairstyles, even the makeup, the hair, it just really dates it badly, and it also it makes you chuckle to yourself a little bit.
I do appreciate, because as someone who's lived abroad myself and in a country that did not have a large amount of English speaking people, but when you see movies that try and glorify that part of the world, and they have the people who come from there who would normally never ever be able to speak English speaking it fluently, that drives me nuts. I will appreciate in this movie they do not have that.
Yeah.
Everybody they talk to is American, but everybody that they speak to who is Japanese, aside from the police officer, because he, I guess, was educated and he can speak a bit of English, that's fine. Everybody else who's Japanese speaks Japanese.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. Like when she's talking to the woman in the street looking for the house that she has to go and take care of, she speaks her broken Japanese that she can, because she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And then that woman points her in the direction, says what she needs to say to get her there, and that's good.
Yep.
I really appreciate that authenticity of it, because
I've been that pain in everyone's
ass. Yeah. In Japan, you know as well as I do.
Okay.
Yeah, you would
Did
never
you catch this at the very beginning after Peter kills himself? He's laying in the ground and there's like close up on his face.
Right.
And you hear the word Dutchin. I have to show it to you at the end because it's hysterical and it's subtle. It's just like barely in there, but you do hear it. It is totally there.
So if anybody doesn't know, Gaijin is foreigner.
Yeah, it's like
a derogatory.
Yeah, it's derogatory because like Gai Kokujin would be like the polite way to say it, but Gaijin's like when you're a fucking foreigner who's doing some stupid shit.
Like we got called that many times in Japan.
Unfortunately.
So it happens. It happens. But like. The same as somebody here going like, ugh, foreigner or something, right? But with that tone.
Yeah,
it's not as bad.
Worse.
Here, it's because we, as immigrant culture in immigrant countries, we're not supposed to be that kind of way, right? We're supposed to be inclusive.
Yeah.
Japan and the homogenous countries, and this also includes Europe and other parts of Asia, they don't. So they're going to have times when they're going to just, say certain things in their own language that refer to people, and they'll have derogatory terms for it.
Yeah.
And then accept. Everywhere has it.
But it's funny.
It is funny.
It's so funny.
No, I think I did miss that.
Yeah.
I think, because I only remember the screams as it pulls away from his face, and then it cuts to like the opening scene with Yoko.
We're gonna pull this up at the end just so you can see this guy. I'll put this. I will put this in the podcast.
I hope you do. That'd be hilarious.
And but yeah, I think that this one is just a little bit. I don't know. It's like a little too awkward with that. But I do like the police officers. I will agree. Like Nakagawa and Igarashi, I think are their names.
Yeah.
Is good because like they do speak to each other in Japanese, and they still. Like, it's still taking place in Japan, and there's just enough Japanese there to, like, hold it all together.
Yeah.
You get the shots of Shibuya Crossing. You get, like,
right,
all of, like, the
Tokyo Tower.
Yeah, you're just like, okay, we are in Japan.
But they never put a cue card to let you know you're in Tokyo.
That's true.
That's
true.
At least you can figure it out.
We didn't get our hand held too badly.
Exactly.
So.
We got all the screenshots, all the establishing shots. It's all very nice. But yes.
Okay. I think it's important to maybe rate this one because I think this represents just an era of film that needs to be talked about, especially in horror, because I think it's crucial. And I would actually love to see, I don't want to necessarily see American remakes, but I do love Japan's contribution to horror.
Of course.
And I think it needs to be acknowledged because I think these movies actually did scare people a lot.
Of course.
Kind of like the spooky movies. Of that time.
There's a reason this was remade for American audiences, right? Yeah, so it had a really good following.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of potential there, and they did execute it quite well.
And there is something to be said. I mean, it is sort of plagiarism because you're just taking their thing and making it yours. And not that we're not doing that a lot anyways with modern film, but it's also
But it was the same director. Same director did this movie as he did the Japanese one. So
I didn't know that.
yeah. It's right after Yoko's Take It. It says directed by Izumi.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
So he's there. That's his So he and Sam Raimi put this together, and that's why Sam Raimi's in the movie, but he's not actually directing it. Okay. And then he's actually still directing this film.
Okay, I think we should follow this up by watching Ju-on, because I think
we'll have to
go back and watch that just to compare them, because I would be curious.
I would be very curious as well, and I would love to see the actual the origin of it.
Yeah.
Right? So
I wouldn't mind having a J-horror month. That'd be
a
cool.
Thing. Yeah.
Just to
throw. I mean,
I'm
we're already halfway through.
reading the books anyways. Let's jump into it.
Yeah.
But
I also want to see The Ring as well. See what's so terrifying about that.
Yeah, that one's we'll get into that too, because we might even watch Dark Water. With I think Jennifer Connelly is in that one.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the last thing I want to acknowledge before we do a little bit of a rating here.
Yes.
So I want to get your thoughts on this.
Yes.
Because I don't know how to quite word this, but at the time, this was a big thing that was happening with horror movies, I think specifically, but kind of by and large was happening to a few movies. Where you'd get a really strong female lead who was kind of big in something else and put them into a horror movie.
Yes.
Naomi Watts.
Yeah.
I think Jennifer Connelly was in it.
Yep.
Who is in Skeleton Key?
Oh, that would be, what was her name? Kate Hudson.
Kate Hudson.
Also
and,
big, yeah.
And then
Sarah Michelle
Gellar.
Find a bigger name. Like usually they came from like a TV show or from like another film or something. This was kind of like they were already kind of going through their big break. You actually see this with a lot of actors.
Yeah.
So maybe not so much, because like a lot of movie stars are not really in the same vein anymore. But what you could actually find out if you notice, like take Chris Pratt for example, right? At one point, so Chris Pratt became really, really big through Parks and Recreation. And then he got a really big break when he got set up with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. Following those, I will say 2 or 3 years after that, barring any other Marvel products, he was in like 4 or 5 other movies. Yeah. And this is just they play on, just like any other trend, they play on like the hotness of how good that actor is recognized by people. Right. I would say at those times, because absolutely Naomi Watts, Kate Hudson, Jennifer Connelly, as you say, like all these actresses, not only are they very good looking, but they're also going to have like this is the appeal. Like Sarah Michelle Gellar was coming from like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and like all these, like she was very well known in like the horror streams.
Yeah, I mean like of Buffy fame, and then like
of course, and
all the other ones had, I guess, TV shows as well.
Absolutely, like, she was going through all this kind of stuff.
I'd be interested to see what the other actresses were. I can't remember like exactly what they were in at the time as well.
But they were bigger names, for sure. And even with the movie that you're not a huge fan of, which was the House of Wax, Alicia Cuthbert was super big.
I think Paris Hilton was the one who sold the tickets.
I think maybe because Paris Hilton was kind of more in like the controversy at the time. Right. I think that did sell. Absolutely, that sells. Yeah. But I think Alicia Cuthbert as the main role, I think she was definitely part of it, because she was part of all those films too.
There's also Jared Padalecki in it.
And, before he was getting into with Supernatural. Right. So absolutely.
There's a lot of big names in that one. So that one was a bit more of a tentpole.
Yeah. So these were all building up, is what I'm saying. So I think
also a remake.
So I'm thinking that when it comes to, at least for these actresses and a lot of the actors, they still do it. Mm-hmm. They take whoever is popular at the time. You can think of any TV show that got big. Any of those actors who were never in film before were suddenly being put into movies. Yeah. And that's just how they roll.
I guess it's just a way it's marketing.
It's the marketing. It's the trend.
What did you think of Sarah Michelle Gellar in this?
So, honestly,
I thought it wasn't great.
She's not bad. She's
I
just,
didn't think it was great.
No, I was just going to say she's not bad, but she's not, you could have replaced her with any of the names we just mentioned. Yeah. And it would have been the same movie.
Yeah, no one really steals the show here besides Doug. Kayak. Well, Doug. What were you doing in this movie, Doug? You were a prop to carry a lighter around.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
And they didn't even burn the damn house down in the end. See? Doug was useless.
It's
fucking nothing, Doug.
Because it saves it for like a sequel, which they did make, but not with Michelle Gellar.
How many did they make? They made 2 or 3.
I think they made 3 films, and then the remake / side movie, which was 2020. That one's the newest one. But yeah,
there would be another one in there.
They may have had like a small TV show, maybe.
Oh, the one that we watched was like it's good. Yeah. But it was just really nihilistic.
Yes.
And it was like kind of all about how life's a dark circle.
Right.
There's another one I want to bring up too here.
Yes.
That doesn't get that it was a manga, and it's called Uzumaki or Spiral.
Okay.
And it's in there somewhere as well, and it got made into a movie. Super weird movie. I don't know if I'd make you watch that one,
Okay.
but it might be interesting just as a film study. But yeah, that one's the manga is probably the more prominent one here. But I think we need to acknowledge kind of the role of manga in some of these movies as well, because there's a lot of like horror manga that was influencing a lot of the visuals of this as well.
Yes.
And so with The Ring, there was some really great manga that was done as well.
Right.
With that in it. So just getting to the end of it here.
Yeah.
What would you kind of rate this one as for you personally?
How do I rate this movie? So I would say it's definitely a scary film.
Yeah.
Children will find this absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
Even
if you're living through them 2000s.
Yeah. And even some adults who would still refuse to watch this movie as well. I'd say for like a horror factor as a film, I would give it a good 7 out of 10, I think. I think I would stick with a 7 out of 10. It's not a bad movie. Mm-hmm. The execution is good, and it is a remake for, like I said, American audiences and international audiences. But there are some things in it that could have been maybe done a little bit better and maybe a little less confusing in some way and maybe not as contrived.
Yes.
Hence having, what'd you call them? Nothing Doug. Or having characters. Also, like there's one scene that I understand what they were going for, but I didn't really like it that much. Is like when Michelle Gellar comes into the house, and then she gets like this whole flashback thing that she's kind of witnessing in real time.
Yeah.
I thought that kind of came out of nowhere. Like that was a big.
There's a few things that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, but that one specifically, because you saw it happen. It's like as if Kayako. Sorry,
you're not good with the names.
Not good with any of these names. Kayako is like telling her, like trying to tell her like, yeah, this is what happened to me, so that she knows how she's like why she's gonna kill her.
Yeah.
But any case, I'd say that's not really a nitpick. That is like a movie thing, but that's why I would say more of a 7. It's an enjoyable watch. I could watch it again, but it's not like a perfect movie.
Yeah.
Yourself?
I mean, as a movie, I'm gonna give it a 5.
Okay.
Because there's too much bullshit in this movie.
Okay.
And I would say that because there's just too much bullshit in this movie, it definitely lowers the quality and the overall what this movie is.
Right.
The problem is like I want to rate it higher though because of the things it does really, really well. This is where numbers are like limited when you're actually critiquing film, right? Because what it does really well is like a 9. And so like it has like these 9, 10 moments. Right. And especially for me as a kid, when you can scare somebody that effectively and your film is that effective, well, you actually achieved what you set out to do.
Right. It's supposed to do that.
And it does that really well in a lot of ways. But then like objectively, it's a little silly.
Right. The story of the story of like the horror elements of this movie are pretty good.
Yes,
they're very good.
I think so.
But then the side things that kind of make those horror elements, story parts come out are silly.
You know what? The real like the truth of it is that the American influence on this was the part that was silly and not so great. But like the original core Japanese ideas were the ones that were really the effective parts of it. Right. And I think that's why I really like the Ring with Naomi Watts, like the remake of the American one, because it does its own thing, but it keeps a lot of the core ideas alive as well.
Sure.
Like it even changes the name from Sadako to Samara. And so, like, you actually get...
Right, you actually get that transfer of, like, culture,
yes.
right? Yeah, so this one, it's still... It's like, original is in Japanese, the remake is also in Japanese, just with Americans.
Yes.
So, I can see how it doesn't transfer over as well.
I think that's probably why it had so much trouble with it. But because of its sequences and things, like, I will always rate this movie highly in terms of, like, not numbers, but in terms of...
Fear content.
Sure. And just...
I get that.
And just... I think it's a great horror movie that everyone should watch just for what it is. Yep. And I think that, even if the acting isn't superb, conceptually it's fantastic. And then I'm looking forward to going back and rewatching a lot of the other ones as well. Yeah. Because I think that just this era of horror is probably my favorite. And so,
makes sense. Early 2000s.
well, early 2000s, but also the influence of Japanese cinema starting to take
build up. Yeah.
Because this is Japanese cinema's like coming out party.
That's right, yeah.
Right? I mean, even though there's plagiarism by American audiences or American productions, I think there's at least some plagiarism in here.
I don't think it's plagiarism. I think it's like just they've talked with it and they've been able to have it transferred over to other audiences.
Yeah,
because it's
I don't know about
by the
Ring.
same creator.
It would actually be like interesting to look and see like
The
how
Ring
much
is the
licensing was done here, because I'm hoping that they discussed it and told some of those
They definitely did, because there's no
for
no
the
way,
Grudge they definitely did.
Yeah, there's no way that
But I
a
wonder
big
for the
budget
Ring.
film like that would have ever had that kind of situation. I'll even say this, like even for like a Hong Kong detective film called Infernal Affairs, also got an American remake, which was called The Departed, which Martin Scorsese did, and that's not even his original idea. That's a Hong Kong Chinese director one, but they definitely collaborated because there are scenes that kind of take inspiration from that kind of aspect to it. So it's interesting to see how they work with that, just so they could get those American audiences or those international audiences, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say this film overall is a good horror film. The story is just a little weird, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
It is what it is for its time.
Yeah.
And if they were to do another one that was like a remake of said remake, I feel like they would probably play it a little bit more closely to having it maybe just be Japanese.
Yeah.
And just have like that one person who is like a transfer student who happens to be living there or something, but everybody else would probably be Japanese.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you can really bring in that whole cultural aspect to it.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we'll have to keep going forward and watching a few more of these and rewatching. Because I can't remember what happens after this. So.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, thanks for watching the podcast again, guys. And thanks for liking and viewing the video, too.
Yeah.
It's been fun the last few weeks just making more of these. So we're trying to get consistent and put these out. So hopefully we can get a good schedule together and, let you know what's coming up next. But we really appreciate all the feedback that people have given us and just watching it as well.
Yeah,
so
it's been great.
Have a great week, guys. And remember, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And Kayako.
Okay. Nice. And Doug.
And Doug!
Don't forget about Doug.
Watch out, Doug. He's going to do nothing.